What's going on, everybody? It's Joe Cordero again, here with Pastor Baron.
So today I want to kind of tackle one of these big historical issues. Want to talk about inequality and some of the challenges that are facing us in terms of a nation as it relates to inequality, and not just the issues of racism and how we look at people and people groups and cultures, because there's certainly some inequality there. We've talked about that, but also another big area is income inequality, and it impacts the entire picture.
So tell us a bit about us being me. Tell me about what is inequality? What does that actually look like in our culture today?
Yeah, so inequality looks like a number of different things. If I had to use an example, and as a matter of fact, just before I jump into that, one of the things that I'd love to see maybe some comments on, some people to send out, do you know who the top 10 richest people just in America are? Top 10. You guys can probably Google that, drop it in the comments. We'll probably see some very familiar names, a couple of people that you guys are really, really familiar with. But if I were to use an example to talk about privilege and inequality, I'll use something that's really simple, something that probably most of us have experienced. Living here in Southern California, one of the things that we all experience is traffic. We all experience that. But there's one privilege and advantage you get if you have somebody else in the car, and that's being able to drive in the carpool lane. You know what? I love being able to drive in the carpool lane, man. And when you're in the carpool lane, you're able to be in a special lane that's designed for those that have additional passengers, and you can bypass a lot of the traffic of those that are single passenger cars. And so there's an advantage that you get because you have somebody else in the car. And it gets even more profound. You don't always have to have somebody else in the car. If you've ever driven down to Orange County or driven down to the beach and you have that fast track, I don't know if you have the fast track pass, but I have the fast track pass, and the other day it hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, I'm going down to the beach. I jump into the fast track lane because that's what I usually do when I'm driving to Orange County. And why do I do that? Because I want to avoid all of the traffic, but it costs me extra money to be able to be in that lane. And one of the things that I've discovered is that when you hop in that lane, one, you have to be able to afford to be able to do that, because it's not always cheap. Sometimes it's $5 to drive in that carpool, that fast track lane. Sometimes it's as much as $10, $11 to drive in those specialized lanes. But what it does do for those that can afford it and for those that do it, it gives you an advantage where you can go 5, 10 times faster than everybody else who's stuck in traffic. And that's part of what inequality does in finances, in education, in wealth in general, is it gives certain groups of people who have access to it, you're able to go further, faster because of what it is that you have, and you just are able to get to your destination. Everybody else is stuck in traffic. The masses are stuck in traffic, and it might take them an hour and a half to get to the beach, depending on what time it is, where they are going, all these different types of things. But for those that have this fast track pass that they have to pay for, you have to have access to it. You got to be able to afford it. It's got to be worth it to you. You're able to get where you're desiring to go a whole lot faster. And that's just kind of a really simplistic way of dealing with a very complicated issue of inequality. And we've seen that certainly for certain groups of people, particularly white Americans, that they've just had a fast track pass in a lot of areas of life, and it's led to a growing inequality gap in America.
Appreciate you sharing that analogy. So let's talk a little bit more about those gaps. And so in talking about privilege, right? I think privilege in itself, is not an evil thing, right?
Right.
Understanding our privilege gives us opportunity to be of partnership with and to call out structures that don't give equal opportunity to other people, right?
For sure, for sure. And, you know, one of the things as I talk about this is that it's not that money's bad, because money certainly isn't bad. It's not that even a lot of the kids that are listening to this, and maybe even some of the parents, you don't control the family that you're born into. You know, we have a very educated society, and people have done business and other things like that, and they've done really well. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. You know, we live in a society and a structure, but it's not necessarily the having that's an issue. It's what you do with it, and what it causes others to have to deal with as a result of having this privilege. What do those that have privilege or have wealth, what do they do with it, and how does it impact everyone else beneath them?
Yeah. So tell us about the history a little bit about some of the structures that have given an unfair advantage to certain groups of people in America.
Well, if we go all the way back, we can talk about how a lot of wealth was built because of free slave labor, where they had people who would work in the fields, they would be able to harvest them, and the slave owners were able to build their businesses without having very, very, very low labor cost. And so a mass amount of wealth was built there. And then it just kind of continued to expand as laws began to come into be, where it said, hey, look, we're going to try to even the playing field. One of the major ways that wealth is built is through real estate. And many people own homes, but there was a time, and I'd love for those that are listening to this that maybe have never heard this term before, or maybe you want to familiarize yourself with it, is redlining is part of what happened. And what redlining was there were areas of cities where literally they said, no blacks, we're not going to grant loans to blacks at all in these particular areas. You're just not going to get them. We're going to relegate you to these areas, and it's called redlining. And what that allowed was there were certain areas of the city that had higher real estate value over time. And it's one of the ways that many Americans build their wealth is by the property that they own. Whereas others, they were relegated to other areas that were not as good. The air quality was poorer, the infrastructure was poorer, and the value of the property just really didn't grow very much. And so we have this historical, intentional segregating, really, of those who are trying to live the American dream, but were prevented to do so because of the actions of banks, those that gave loans, and because of just clear racism. That's one of the areas and one of the ways that the inequality has kind of widened its gap in America. And now it's getting broader and broader and broader, where it's really getting to a place where it's getting out of control.
What ways has it continued to perpetuate this cycle, like nowadays?
Well, you know, one of the things is that, you know, just because of privilege, you get certain advantages that just come along with it. I have a brother that's in the music industry, and he's been on a couple of world tours with someone that your kids might not necessarily be aware of today. He doesn't have a lot of music out, but he was a really, really huge star. His name was Lenny Kravitz. And Lenny Kravitz traveled all around the world, sold out stadiums, and my oldest brother toured with him. And because my oldest brother toured with him, when he came to the city where I was in Chicago when I was in grad school, he gave me a backstage pass. And what that meant was I didn't have to buy a ticket. I could go and I would be backstage. I had a chance to meet with Lenny and all those that were part of the tour, eat the tour food, all those things. I just had an advantage that the average fan didn't have. And so there's just some built-in advantages that people have because of who they're connected to. And another big way that this happens, Joe, is through education. And one of the great things that Loma Linda is doing is giving kids a great education, which is going to give give them an advantage. But now that we have this education, what is it that we can do to reach out to other communities and to be able to help them gain better footing in society and overcome some of the disadvantages they have? Where you're born, where you're educated, what you're born into really, really, really does matter.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think for anyone that might not have had the opportunity to think about their privilege in their life. What are some ways that they can practice a reflection like that to see, how they've experienced privilege, or, how they kind of fit in all of this in this conversation? Like, what are some helpful ways that they can begin doing that?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, I'll start with the mindset. Sometimes the reflection or the thought is when you see people that you might consider poor, or people that live in like the ghettos of society, our mindset and the way that we people have thought about them is that they're lazy, that they don't want to do anything. And I would suggest that you begin to listen to stories of people who have had challenges in life, who have come through difficult places. Sometimes it's not because of something that they desire. Sometimes it's some issues that happen that are generational. They're generational issues. So I would ask, what is your attitude, first of all, toward those that struggle in life? Are you saying initially, oh man, they're just lazy people, they don't want to do anything, they just want to take advantage of other things? There's just so many different ideas and mindsets that sometimes we can identify already if we are looking down on other people. And then one of the other ways is how freely we really want to engage in a community. We live right next door to San Bernardino.
Right.
And San Bernardino at one point was a really a growing, burgeoning city in the town. But over the last 20 years, it's kind of gone down lower and lower and lower. And we're right next door to that community. And I would say that part of what this LifeCast is all about is about action. And there are a number of church groups. There are a number of places. I know that Loma Linda University intentionally has been doing a lot of work in the city of San Bernardino to try to bring hope to those that are there, those that are struggling in that particular city. I would suggest taking some time to try to find and look for ways that you can bring hope to people that are really struggling. And right where we are in the Inland Empire, we have a real area that could use a lot of help and support. And there are a lot of kids, a lot of teenage kids that really are having a tough time. So maybe there's some creative ways that your listeners, our listeners, I should say, have to be able to reach out and be more compassionate and empathetic toward those that don't have as much as they do. Not everybody gets a chance at private education. This is a real blessing that a lot of kids, the kids at Loma Linda have and other places.
Right. You're absolutely right. And I'm thinking, just a reminder to when I first started asking, like, what am I privileged in? I think I took it the wrong way to be like, oh, now I did something wrong because I have privilege or something. And that's a reminder when we talked in the beginning, like, it's about understanding what people don't get an equal opportunity in and being aware of that, and then getting into how can I now use my privilege as a bridge point for people to have an equal opportunity, right? And so I totally love what you're saying about hearing the stories of other people. Like, that's the first step, like opening our minds to say, like, there are people with an experience very different than my own, right? And sometimes we get so caught up in the struggles that we're experiencing, not understanding, like, in the perspective of others, like, we all go through things for sure, but like we go through their different struggles, but understanding where each other is and where we come from is going to definitely help us in connecting and having more empathy towards people around us,
Yeah. One of the things that, if there's a practical way to kind of just experience this, I'd say is if you have a favorite place that you like to go to. Now, obviously, we're in a pandemic, and a lot of people aren't really traveling a lot of different places, so we have to exercise some caution there. But as things improve, as time improves, I would say to some of your kids out there that with their parents' permission and being very, very mindful, choose your favorite mall. Maybe it's Victoria Gardens, or maybe it's Tyler, or maybe even getting down to Mountain Grove. And I would say, instead of hopping in your car to drive there, one of the privileges that we don't really know is that there's so many people who don't have cars. Like, having a car is a privilege. So I would say to them, catch the bus from your house. Like, walk to a bus station, get on the bus, and go to one of the places where you would go and meet your friends. See how long it takes you. See what the experience is like. And realize that there are a lot of people who just don't have those types of things that we don't even think of, that we don't take for granted. Another way would be that there's things that are called food deserts. They might not have ever heard of that. If you Google food desert, you can look around the area where there are places where, believe it or not, there's no grocery store nearby. I would say that there are many people in impoverished communities that when they go shopping, the reason why, and I've done this, Joe. I went in and say, in poor communities, there's just, there's a lot of other health challenges and different things like that. But there's also this built-in challenge where a lot of people don't even have transportation, where they have to literally walk with their groceries from the grocery store back to their house. You can't go to Costco and buy Costco bulk items and then walk with all of it back to your house, even if you just get 2 or 3 items. I would suggest walking to your local grocery store, seeing what you can get, and then walking back home. That's part of what some people are challenged with. And the blessing, even if with your friends you walk to your local boba spot, right? You go and say, hey, look, we're going to walk from where we are to boba and then walk back home. Let me tell you, it will become clear that having a vehicle, the amount of time that you save having a car, the energy that it requires. If it's a hot day, it's like, oh my goodness, I need to rest and take a break. These are some things that people have to do every single day.
That is great practical challenge, man. Definitely. I think if we tried that, I think our eyes will be open to a lot of different things for sure. Appreciate that challenge, man.
Hey, maybe we can throw out something like give away something for those that might post about taking that challenge, Maybe they can send a post to you and say, hey, look, I took the challenge of saying, hey, look, I walked instead of taking my car, or I took the bus and I went someplace and this is what my thoughts were. Maybe there's something that we can come up with. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there. I don't want to obligate you to anything. We didn't do that.
I'm down for it. I'm into it. If any of you want to try something out, tag us, use the hashtag livecast, and we definitely want to hear those stories and what those experiences are like, and let's get into that. Definitely appreciate that.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say that one of the places that I love about the gospel, about Jesus and being at a Christian school, is this fact that we can look outside in the world and we can see, man, there's inequality in so many different places. And there are a few really big reasons why, and a lot of little reasons why it still exists. But there's one place where we all are equal, where it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how big the house is that you live in. It doesn't matter what your degrees are. None of that matters. And that's at the foot of the cross. Jesus is the ultimate example of saying, you can't buy salvation. You can't buy any of these things. Everyone's equal. All I want, here's what the cost is. It's something that everybody has, and that's your heart.
Amen. And we look forward to a time where we can experience that community of Jesus, the community of Christ, and be in that place of understanding and completeness and wholeness. Any closing thoughts, Pastor Barone?
Man, this was great. I'd love to hear the feedback. I want to just kind of reiterate once again, because I don't want anybody to feel like I'm guilting them at all. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
That, there's some real blessings and there's some real reward for hard work. Some people have been in school for many, many years, or have developed great products or built great businesses. And there's nothing wrong with that. I praise God for it. It's a real blessing. Those things are really, really, really good. I think that where we have to consider is what is it that we do with God, with what God has blessed us with? How can we give more? How can we share more? How can we make it even more equitable for people that might not have had the same advantages that you have? And I believe this next generation, this generation that's coming up, is going to do just that and tackle those challenges. And I think that even now people are beginning to see more clearly. So it isn't a guilt thing, it's a real thing. But now the action, how we can make a difference, really comes into play.
I love that. Thank you, Pastor Brown. This has been Livecast. We'll join you next time, where we'll talk about praise and protest and what our role is amidst all the riots and the protests that are going on in the world around us. We hope to see you next time on the next episode of Livecast. Peace.